Welcome to Beyond the Walls, a podcast for women ready to break barriers and step boldly into their purpose. I'm Kylie, your coach and guide for overcoming fear, silencing self-doubt, and building a life of courage and connection. Whether faith is your anchor or you're still trying to figure it out, this is a space for growth, authenticity, and transformation. Subscribe now and let's start building the courage to be seen, heard, and unstoppable. This is Beyond the Walls, where your purpose begins. Welcome back to the podcast, y'all. Today is part 2 of my 4-part series of being able to figure out how we can stop hiding and start being honest. So last week, I kind of dove into just kind of like the history. Like, is it even happening? How do we start gaining awareness that it's happening? Where did it originally come from, right? And being able to really get curious and take a look at our past. And so today I want us to go through kind of like, how does it show up for us? What are the masks that we're putting on today that is preventing us from really being honest and we're hiding behind, right? I think off the top of my head, immediately there's perfectionism. People pleasing is a huge one. But I think something that we don't give enough attention to that happens, and I hear from other women so much, is over apologizing and not apologizing for like, gosh, I hurt you. I wronged you. I did something wrong. I need to reconcile with you. But this knee-jerk showing up and apologizing for simply existing, simply taking up space, simply having a need, simply having an opinion. When we show up like that, I don't know that other people really call it apologizing, but that's what I see it as. And so if that's you, or even just the people pleasing really gets you, or you know for sure you're working hard at perfectionism, I got to just prove my worthiness to take up this space, then this episode is for you. So something I want to cover is, so last week in the episode, I was sharing about how like an identity I took on as a child because of my older sibling. I took on this identity that became don't cause trouble. I don't know that I took on so much as people pleasing, don't take on trouble. Let me just do it their way. But I just didn't want to cause conflict. I didn't want to cause chaos. I wanted to be easygoing. I wanted to not be the reason for other people's upset. And so at some point in my early 20s, and this is where I want to hopefully give you guys some framework, some vision for what does it look like to kind of own what it was, look at how it's resulting today, and then be in a space where we can really create something new of what would be true of how I really do want to show up, right? And so I think just being able to be in a space where you can acknowledge what was without all the shame and the regrets and the double downing on yourself of I should have done better, I shouldn't have done it this way, right? That victim mentality, or even that like it's done. There's nothing to be done now. Like it's we create this high pressure environment that is like, we're stuck here. This is it forever, right? It's like this death sentence, as opposed to really believing that like, we can turn this ship around. Like this doesn't have to be me forever. And when we take that ownership back that says, no, I actually do get to have a say. Is this really what's true? Right. And so for me then in my 20s, and I'm looking back and I'm thinking about the autonomy, appropriate autonomy of letting my brother be however he was for whatever reason he was in his own experience. The opportunity for me is to be able to look at who he is. What was that like for him, right? And we've gone back a few times and been like, gosh, what was your childhood like, right? From your perspective. We certainly know it from our own, but what was life like for you? What did you like doing back then? Like, what did you feel about getting in trouble? Did you feel like you were in trouble all the time, right? And it wasn't even, I don't even think it was on the daily, right? There were like maybe 5 key moments that I really remember that stood out of him being in trouble and doing something, right? One of them, just as a side note that's funny, just to give you some context, you're not creating any stories in your mind in the silence. There was a day and we were both home. It must have been summertime. And he was out with like a bunch of the kids on the street that were his age. They were out on bikes. I think there was a fight. Somebody punched somebody maybe, but I just remember like the information trickling out throughout the day. Somehow he came home and my mom knew there was a fight or there was a problem. I don't know whether another parent had called or he came in upset. But I just remember being around and it felt like it took all day long to get the truth out of my brother. Like it became this, like my mom just trying to get to the bottom of like, who started it? What happened? Does something even need to be repaired? Like do I need to be a protector in this moment? Or am I your disciplinarian? Because you need to go apologize to somebody, right? Like who's at fault? Who's even involved here? And it took all day long for the real story to come out because every time my brother spoke, it was a different story or it was a new fact or a new detail, right? This is my perspective, mind you. We are 3 years apart. So if he was 8, 7, 6, 5, I would have been 5 years old, right? What do I know? Like looking at your kids now and you've had a 5-year-old or maybe you're about to have a 5-year-old and thinking through like, how much of a story, how much of all of the facts of life does a 5-year-old really understand, right? So when you can break it down from that perspective, I hope that you find freedom. I hope it's comic relief for you, like lowering the pressure and the significance of like how ridiculous it is of us to make these walls, these boundaries, like this is how life has to be based on your 5-year-old perspective, your 8-year-old perspective, right? So crazy. So, and my brother's behavior again is like totally age appropriate, from at least from my perspective, right? And we've laughed about it since then. I think I just saw him over, we went up to see my family over spring break with my kids and we were talking about that one day, right? No new shocking information came out. I think we got a little more details on what the conclusion was. So, right. But those are the moments that we create these significant decisions. And so as a young adult in my 20s and needing to redefine my relationship with my brother, how are we both going to show up? If I keep holding him to this story that I told myself as a kid, that was like, oh, well, everything's about my brother. It's always my brother first and not me. Let me just be quiet. Let my brother have all of the spotlight. How is that going to impact my friendship, my relationship, my security, my confidence when I'm in a room with my brother and my parents? Does that make sense? Same as with my parents. Like if I keep holding them hostage to this story that says I'm only acceptable if I stay in my lane, if I don't ruffle any feathers. And here's some freedom that I found for myself that I found very healing when I was willing to acknowledge this dynamic and kind of be open to creating something different. Because that is what I took on, I can tell you what I didn't ever get to practice. I never got to practice positive reconciliation. I never got to practice being humble and apologizing for being selfish or lying or, breaking a rule, disrespecting my parents' rules for me, right? He got to experience a lot of that. If you're always in trouble, you're always having to reconcile and to repair that relationship. I never got to practice that. So as an adult looking back, you're like, that's a perfectly healthy, appropriate, developmental experience. So what that said to me in my 20s is one, it got to take away the shame, the judgment, the labeling that what my brother was doing was wrong and that what I was doing was right. Like it was the way to be, as if avoiding ever getting in trouble was the goal and that is the highest priority. And instead, being able to lower all of that pressure, expectations, rules around that. This is what I got. This is what I didn't get. So sure, I got a lot more peaceful of a childhood. I didn't get in trouble very much. I experienced a lot of peace, right? But with that peace, right, it created another level of hiding where I can't show up and make mistakes. I got to show up perfect. I got to show up doing the right thing at all times, right? Like my priority became just don't make mistakes, as opposed to facing the pros and the cons, the good and the bad, the successes and the failures, and being really secure that I was going to receive love on the other end both ways, right? Now, I also want to remind you, we talked about this a little bit last week as well, but in this, as you're listening to it, I need you to also recognize that then what there is for me to also learn is that with my parents, I never gave them the opportunity to show me the love that they probably already had. And they didn't know. It wasn't something we were talking about. It was an unconscious thing. It was not an intentional thing. I get to free them and myself up by being able to just acknowledge that that's what's so. Just because I didn't give them the opportunity doesn't mean they didn't love me unconditionally. I don't even know what it would have been, but I can choose to repair that relationship now, right? I get to go back and ask questions and be like, was this what you were feeling when I was however old, right? I get to give my mom a chance to explain herself and her experience. What did she think was happening? What was her focus? What did she see was the challenge in front of me? There's no need to be comparing and competing with the other people. And I think it's in that space, especially when it comes to us over apologizing, when we can be comfortable with how do I show up? How was I created? What are my values? What are my challenges, my weaknesses, my strengths, right? What makes me me? And then I get to show up in the world in that way and to feel secure and work with other people and all of their ways that they were created. I hope that that's making sense for y'all today. So I want you to think about for yourself, what are the masks that you put on in your world? Let's take a minute and talk about people pleasing. So I would say because of my personality and my makeup, I never really claimed myself as a people pleaser because how I define people pleasing is avoiding conflict at all cost, like not having a voice at all. And I think through the years, I have found myself, I come from a very opinionated family, right? So that probably was a little bit of a blessing actually to me to not go full blown into how deep people pleasing could go. Because I wasn't naturally going to be a doormat, right? Or just be taken advantage of. And I think also because of the other situations that I had in my life, right? Like the sexual abuse stuff and different just disappointing things that happened. I think those also protected me and set me up to not go too far down that path of being taken advantage of again, right? I got to grow and really build that strength to be able to engage differently in that way. But when we're trying to, so what I was saying was that I claim to be an authority figure pleaser. So I'm not just going to be people pleasing for everybody, but there were certain people that I did just put my life in their hands. And I said, hey, if you're okay with me, I'm okay with me. What do you want me to do? Whatever it's your way or the highway. I willingly did that is how I felt. And so how are you intentionally, deliberately choosing to put yourself in a position? So whether it's authorities or it is everybody, or it's certain relationships, or it's certain dynamics, where you have chosen to say, hey, it's all about you. You're the only one that gets to have a say in this situation. As long as you're happy, I'm happy. I don't count. What I need doesn't matter. What you need is more important. I really want you to sit in that for a minute and think about, how have you actively participated in that dynamic? It's not been done to you. It may have started out that way, right? In those early years, that might have been the dynamic that you were in, and you owned it. Did you own it too much? Did you own it too far? Did you take it out of context? Are you still living under that 5-year-old's decision of what that was and what it meant about you and what it meant about other people? Or is it time to redefine that and to look at it differently now? How could it even look differently? And when we can kind of really own as much as we can of like, oh, this is how I'm choosing to still participate in this way. The more we can own, the faster, the easier it will be for us to make that decision to change and do it differently. We stop looking to other people to keep blaming that we're in this position because of them. We're now in this position because of us. And is that what I really still want in my life? Who said this is how it had to be? And I think being able to really put words to, if other people really did tell you that, at the age that you're at now, with the maturity level that you're at now, with the worldly experience, the environment, the big picture, is it still an accurate judgment? Is it appropriate? Is it healthy? Is there another way? What are we making it mean when we say that it's only up to them? They're the only ones that have a say. I want you to consider, when you take on that kind of a demeanor, I want you to consider, what would it mean in the opposite? Because there's some kind of meaning that you're making it mean about you and your value, what you can say, or what you think the outcome is going to be. And I want you to start just trying that on in your thoughts first. And then again, like I always say, go practice on your safest relationship. Go practice on your most secure friend or family member. Go practice with a stranger that has, like, just test it. Put your toe in the water. Just try it on of like, what if it wasn't this way? What's one small ask I can start asking or speaking up for, or just maybe putting out a little opinion or a suggestion? Test your theory. You fear they're going to double down on you and reject you and never speak to you again? Okay, let's test it out. Because here's the other thing I want you to know. If you're in a friendship where you're not allowed to have a say, and it's really true. What if it's really true that it is their way or the highway? Is that really the relationship you want to protect? Like, what is that relationship built on? And so why are you giving that much power to that relationship and that dynamic to make all of these decisions for you? Does that make sense? So really be willing to kind of test and look at the quality, the safety, the toxicity of that relationship. And if it's a two-way street, then practice in it. Create more safety. Just because it rocks the boat doesn't mean it's a deal breaker. Doesn't mean it can't be said. Doesn't mean it can't be repaired. Doesn't mean you can't grow and mature through it. So let's talk about perfectionism a little bit, right? I think that one's probably pretty talked about, I feel like, at least, right? We all talk about perfectionism, and I think it's an easy way where we hold ourselves hostage by perfectionism. But I think it's an important thing to really look at, to think about, are we holding other people against a standard that they're not holding up against us? I think about it, like, if you switch it around, right? If you are a person who is like the yes girl, and you treat relationships where it's always about them, if they're happy, I'm happy, okay? you want to please them, right? You want them to be happy. The problem is that you just don't also think you can be happy, and that in order for them to be happy, you have to be unhappy, or you can't also be happy, right? But if you flipped it around, would you want to not make people happy, right? Like, you find joy in making people happy. So why would that other person, why are you assuming that they wouldn't be happy to make you happy? And I think sometimes when we flip it around, and like, if I were them, what would I want to experience? Why are we accusing them of not wanting the same thing? So if that helps you to just kind of test the ground a little bit, think about it in that way. Flip it around, flip the script around and say, if the roles were reversed, what would I want to have happen? Because I don't know about you, but when I've been in relationships or friendships with other people that never have a say, like, it's uncomfortable for me. Like, I don't want it to always be my way or the highway. I don't want to be the only one that is making the decisions in the relationship. Like, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel secure. It doesn't feel authentic to be on the receiving end of somebody who refuses to have an opinion or a need or take up space. And so you might be trying to protect one thing, but you're missing out on another, right? Kind of like in my example earlier. Okay, so I was avoiding ever getting in trouble, but I missed an amazing opportunity of real intimacy and authenticity to repair and reconcile in relationships. Like, those are positive things I missed out on. And so what if you're actually missing out on an amazing blessing because you're so focused on one particular outcome? And so when you're looking at the perfectionism, labeling what your intended outcome is, and flip the script and see if it still makes sense if the roles were reversed. And I think both of those really do go in a lot into our over apologizing, right? I think sometimes it can be rooted in politeness. We're being kind and loving, like we've been taught to always share our toys, right? When we were kids. Like, at some point though, when it's means that in order for you to win, I have to lose, that is not the same thing as not apologizing for taking up space. That is not the same thing as speaking up and having an opinion. That is not the same thing. And so it's really important that you define why you're coping in the way that you're coping. How does your mask show up? What are these rules, these walls, these boundaries that you've put up for yourself because you're trying to create a specific outcome? And so when you're looking at, right, like the politeness, or in order for you to be honored, I must be dishonored. Where did that come from? Why is that the only way? Like, what if we redefined what it means to honor somebody? There's a great passage in Philippians, and it says that we should look not only to our own interest, but to the interest of others. And I think so many times we get really extreme in one or the other. And sometimes in our overreaction to be in that dominant space where we feel like we've just been people pleasing, and it's been, we've given too much of ourselves to just make it all about these other people. Sometimes we overreact and then we make it only about ourselves. And I'm not advocating for that either, right? There is a way that we can sacrifice and honor other people and also be honoring ourselves. Sometimes there's ways to sacrifice, right? Like, sacrifice is good. It can be loving, but not at the expense when it's coming from the place of like, I'm going to sacrifice myself because I don't have any value, because I am so little and minuscule in this situation. And I encourage you to think about, how are you showing up sacrificially for other people? Is it out of your lack, or is it out of your strength? Are you showing love, out of security, out of confidence, out of value is very different than sacrificing and showing up for other people and giving to them and prioritizing others because you have no value, because you're so lacking in something. You're not worthy of the time. You're not worthy of having a space. You're not worthy of having an opinion. I hope you can feel the difference and start to recognize for yourself of where is the sacrifice coming from. And I think when we're giving out of love, like it feels good. It feels awesome. But we also then need to ask for things, take up space out of our own value. I think one of the biggest things that I've seen lots of memes on it, and so I feel like it's part of just the kids, the generation, whatever generation they are. And I feel like there's something about it. There's such a high priority of not inconveniencing other people. Like when it comes to public spaces, right? Like the library. We're at the library, we're looking for a particular book, and my son is like, no, don't ask the librarian. And I'm like, why would we not ask the librarian for help? We've already went through all of the things that we can do, right? That's fine if you don't want it to be the very first thing. Like you're not going to put any effort into finding it out yourself, but we looked on the computer, we looked everywhere. And he's like, no, don't bother them. Don't bother them. And I'm like, this is their job. That's why they're here. Like, why would we assume that a librarian would be inconvenienced, irritated, bothered, offended, that I would need their help? I would assume they want to be of service. That is why they were hired. And if they personally, like this specific librarian doesn't want to, I guarantee you they were hired to happily serve the patrons of the library. Their boss would not feel that way. The person who is paying their paycheck, which actually those are my taxes, this is my money that I have paid for into this library. This is my library. It doesn't mean we go to the librarian and we treat them like dirt and we treat them like a slave and we demand from them and we chew them out for not having the book that I need, right? So how are you viewing asking for help in those situations? Because I promise you, asking them nicely, respectfully, kindly, with honor is not disrespectful. And I think if we're not clear with ourselves, sometimes I think what we've decided is that asking for help is rude and demanding and we'd be treating them X, Y, and Z. Is that how you're going to treat them? Did you see somebody else treat them that way one time? Like, acknowledge then why you even think that that's a thing. Who did that for you? Who led by example? Is that maybe that's how your mom spoke to workers? And so I'm all here for don't speak to them in that way. But the answer is an opposite extreme of don't ever ask them for help, right? So this week, I want you to start spending some time getting curious about your masks. How are you showing up? How are you coping? How are you treating other people with honor? But how are you also treating yourself with honor? Where is your self-respect? Where is your value? Where is your voice? Who said you didn't have one? And can it be reframed? Can we choose something different? Does it have to be? Is it the only way that it can be done now? So as we close this out, next week, we're going to talk about how to actually start to use our voice then. Let's take it to action steps and to see how we can go from awareness, acknowledgement, and turn it around so we can create something different. So excited to get into that. If you haven't already, go into the show notes right now and grab your free download. It is a very valuable, just a guide, a tool for you that will help you process and manage your fear when you're talking about being afraid to cause conflict, or when there is a conflict. Let's say you tried this out and you tested it and something went poorly. This will help you talk yourself off the ledge and process like what happened, what is true about this situation, what is not true about this situation. It's called Unlock Relationship Security, and you will be that much closer to being able to show up secure. Your friends, your relationships, your spouse, your family members, your coworkers, they need you to be secure in who you are. You want them to be secure. They want you to be secure too. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Walls. If this episode inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend and leave a review. Your support helps more women step into their courage and purpose. Ready for more? Subscribe to the podcast and contact me. You can find me at beyondthewallspodcast.com. Reach out for coaching, more resources, and all the support you could need. Remember, breaking through the walls is just the beginning. Your best life